It can, at points, be hard to tell whether what we're saying is really of any interest to those we're addressing. Few people, other than our partner in a bad mood or our adolescent child, will ever directly cut us short and announce that they find us dull. It is, as a result, all too easy to develop an impression of our own compelling nature. If we were to ask our interlocutor, "Am I boring you?" we can be certain that the one answer we will never receive is, "Well, since you ask, yes, you are rather." If we choose to wait until people fall asleep while we're recounting an anecdote or check their phone as we get to the punchline of our joke, it will be too late. Our reputation as a windbag will long ago have been sealed. Fortunately, most of what people need to tell us does not have to be directly stated. The evolution of a civilization can be measured by the scope of its dictionary of unsaid signals. The clue to another's interest lies not in their overt declarations, but in their degree of responsiveness to our words. We can gauge interest by studying how closely and logically another's questions follow from our statements, how fast their replies come, how invested they seem in their emphases, whether their eyes meet ours when we stress a point, and the degree of elasticity and benevolence in their smile. To a trained observer, an urgent cry, "I need to go to bed now," can be communicated by nothing more brutal or direct than a gaze at the overhead smoke alarm that's held a fraction too long, or a "that's wonderful" that lacks a minute but critical dose of wonder. It's mostly easy enough to note the cues. When we ignore them, it isn't that we aren't receiving them, but that we are somehow opting not to register them. And we are not doing so for a poignant reason, because we cannot bear to imagine that we might be boring, because the idea of not belonging sufficiently deeply in another person's life is untenable, because we are unreconciled to the fundamental loneliness of existence and the tragic disjuncture between what we want from other people and what they may be prepared to provide. We have grown deaf from the rigidity of our need, not any failure of sensitivity. Somewhere, the idea of not pleasing someone conversationally has turned from a risk into a catastrophe that must be manically warded off. We become insistent and willfully oblivious. We give up seeking to delight and settle instead on the more modest hope of not being actively thrown out. The insult to our self-love that we read into another's bored reaction feels too great, and our resources to deal with it too slim for us to take in the meaning of the long pauses and wandering eyes. We overlook the cues because what they indicate to our unconscious minds isn't the relatively innocuous thought that the other person wants to go to bed. They become embroiled in a deeper story about our self-worth. They become indicators that we are fundamentally displeasing, that we deserve our isolation, that we are hateful wretches. The best guarantee of not boring others is, therefore, the development of an internal robustness that can allow us to withstand the thought that we do have tedious aspects. The interesting person can acknowledge that losing someone's attention is a setback, but not a sign of damnation. To develop a more benevolent picture of what it means occasionally to bore, it can help to study the responses of parents to their small children, for there are no better examples of the easy coexistence of boredom with love. To a parent, their 4-year-old child will be at once the most lovable creature they've ever met, and, by a long way, especially in their conversation, the most tedious. Even outside of parenthood, we are all endowed with surprisingly rich capacities to love someone and, at the same time, to find them extremely wearing. It does not, as the bore mistakenly ends up thinking, need to be a choice between love or boredom. To skirt the danger of growing into a full-blown bore, we should foster the inner courage to imagine that we might sometimes, without anything too awful being meant by this, be just such a thing.
At the School of Life, we are constantly developing new products to help us develop emotional intelligence. To learn more, follow the link on your screen now.